Our package is now working and we can use it in our Laravel application just as we used to include it before. So here it is, and now we get random Chuck Norris jokes from the API. Great. Now, the way that we integrated this in the Laravel application is like this. So we have the route, and then we create the joke factory, and then we can use this joke factory to get a random joke. Now, if you know Laravel, you know that you can make use of the facades in there. So this is, for example, a facade. It's a static call that will get redirected to the IOC container and will resolve the class behind the static call and then use the method and call it on this object. So what I want to do is, with the joke factory, I want to have a facade, let's say it's called Chuck Norris, and then want to be able to write something like this: Chuck Norris, get random joke. Now let's see how we can make this work. Right now our package is framework agnostic. There is no coupling to any framework at all, and now we want to add some kind of extra functionality for the Laravel framework itself. So in our package code, what we need to do is we need to create something that Laravel can then use and make into their application. So this is called a service provider. So we can go and create a new service provider. So we'll create a new class, use our namespace. And let's call it Chuck Norris Jokes Service Provider. And this will extend from Laravel's service provider. And let's save the file. All right, but until now we cannot yet import this class because it's not included in our project. So what do? We go to the composer JSON and we need to require some kind of Laravel related package so that we can make use of this service provider. Well, that's one way to do it, but if we require it, then whoever wants to use our package, even though if they don't use Laravel, needs to install the Laravel related packages. So this is not what we want to do. Instead, let's include the package for this as a dev dependency. So we only need it for testing this package, but if someone actually wants to include the package, they do not necessarily need it. Of course, if you want to use it with Laravel, yes, you will need this, but it's not a requirement per se for this package. So what we can do is there's a great package called Orchestra Test Bench, and this package is like a full test suite for Laravel packages. So we're going to use this as a dev dependency. All right, here you can see the requirement, so we can go and run this. Okay, so now we have installed Orchestra Test Bench, and if we head back into Sublime, we can see that we now have PHP unit and Test Bench as a dev dependency for our package. Okay, now if we head back to the service provider, we are now able to include this service provider. So what we need is this Illuminate Support Service Provider class. Okay. Now, a service provider has basically just two methods. One is the boot method, and one is the register method. Whoop, only register. Okay. Register is the method that gets called for each of the service provider that are loaded in the framework, and this is the place where we can load different classes into the container of Laravel so that they can later on get resolved. All right, so before we start with the actual service provider, let's create the facade first. So I'm going to create a new folder called facades, and in there we create a new file. And let's call it Chuck Norris, and this one extends the facade class. All right, now we can import the facade class. There we have it. And the facade works like this. We have a static method get facade accessor. And this returns how Laravel can create this facade, so the object that is underlying this facade, using the container. All right, so let's just call it Chuck Norris as the facade accessor. And now what we need to do is, in our service provider, we have to tell Laravel what this Chuck Norris class is actually going to be and how this can get resolved. All right, so in here, in the register method, we can use this app, which is the base container for the Laravel application. And then we can bind Chuck Norris, so the string Chuck Norris. Every time someone requests this string from the container, we will return a new joke factory, like this. Okay, so quick recap. We have the facade. The facade tells Laravel, hey, if you want to instantiate the underlying object, use this string for the container. And then in the service provider, we tell Laravel, if someone is looking for this string in the container, give it this object. All right, so this is all we need to do in order to make this work. Now, to automatically register the service provider and the facade within Laravel, we can use a different setting in our composer.json file. This was introduced in Laravel 5.5, if I'm not mistaken, and allows you to define service providers and facades that should automatically get registered in case someone requires one of your packages. So this feature is called Auto Discovery and Package Discovery. Here it is. And this is what we need to do. So we need to add this information into our composer.json file, like this. And in here, we are telling Laravel that we have a provider in the namespace m.potsiot Chuck Norris jokes. And the class is called Chuck Norris jokes service provider. And then we have a facade alias, and the facade should be Chuck Norris. And the underlying class to use would be m.potsiot Chuck Norris jokes facades Chuck Norris. Okay. Now, if we go back into our Laravel application where we have included our package as a symlink to this folder, all we need to do is do a composer update so that it refreshes the composer.json settings from our packages. Oh, and there we see we have an invalid JSON. Okay, let's see. Okay, the comma here needs to go. That was too much, and run again. Okay, and now you can see in the list of discovered packages, suddenly there's our new package in there. So Laravel discovered our package, which means it read the information from our composer.json file. And if we now go into our Laravel application, we should be able to remove this line and replace this with our new facade call. So now we should be able to say Chuck Norris get random joke. Let's give this a try in the browser. Okay, it's unable to find our class. So let's see if we made a typo in our composer.json file. So here's our facade class. Oh, all right. It has the wrong namespace. So it should be inside of the facades namespace, of course. And there we have it. So now we can use the facade in our Laravel application and have this registered in the service provider. But our class is still accessible and our package is still usable without Laravel at all.